На трибунах аллеют знамена, облака в поднебесье плывут. На зеленом ковре стадиона разноцветные майки цветут.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Russian Football News Podcast. It's a bit of a change of host this evening, as our regular host James Nichols is regrettably absent. Therefore, I am your substitute host tonight, Richard David Pike. Last weekend saw the final match day of Russian Premier League action before the winter break. Later on in the podcast, I will update everyone on the results of the action in the final round of RPL games before Christmas. We'll take an in-depth look into one game in particular, Dynamo Moscow versus Zenit St. Petersburg, the game of the weekend, and analyse Russia's recent draw, which was done today, for the 2022-23 UEFA Nations League Group B. As mentioned at the end of last week's podcast, tonight I am joined on the RFN podcast by a very special guest, and I'll let her introduce herself now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Konovalova, and I am the Austrian football analyst for Football Radar, which is a British-based football data company. And apart from that, I'm just in general really interested in Austrian, German, Central European football, Russian also. And yeah, this is how you know me. You can find me on Twitter or anywhere by the handle iManch and by the handle FR Fußball Anna.
Fantastic. Dobry wieczór, Anna. Как дела?
Отлично.
Yep, that's the only Russian we'll be speaking on the podcast tonight. I need to get some serious practice done over the festive season. We have tonight's podcast. We're going to focus on examining, because obviously Anna is a specialist in Austrian and German football, in addition to her beloved Spartak Moscow. We're going to be discussing tonight some of the similarities and differences between Austrian football, German football, and Russian football. That's what the majority of the podcast will focus on today. So we've drafted a range of questions to ask Anna, and I'll start off with the first question. I mean, supporting Spartak is surely already punishment enough. If you can excuse the joke. But can I ask, how did you also choose Bayer for Leverkusen as your German Bundesliga team, especially given the trauma that has come with supporting them over the years in addition to Spartak?
Yeah, these teams clearly have lots of things in common. But actually, I think the story should start with how I came to Austrian football, because Leverkusen appeared in my life through Austrian football. With Austria, the story is pretty simple. It all started with Stanislav Cherchesov. In early 2010s, I think it was 2012, me and my best friend at the time, we went to Tyrol, to the surroundings of Innsbruck, just for a vacation in summer, to climb mountains and so on and so on. And I, as a person who's genuinely interested in football, I decided to research what's up with football out there. And it turned out that the legendary FC Tirol, where Stani Cherchesov has spent a great part of his career, we would say, this club doesn't exist right now as it is, but it has a Phoenix club called Wacker Innsbruck. At the time, they were in the Austrian Bundesliga. And I started to keep an eye on them, because why not? We have this connection through Cherchesov and so on and so on. They were struggling in the Bundesliga. They got relegated after a couple of years. But in these 2 years, I have started just following the whole league. And at the time, it was the moment when Red Bull Salzburg rose, because it were the first Rangnick years, and the club has been developing really quickly. And at the time, they've had a manager called Holger Schmidt, who later in 2014 went to Bayer Leverkusen. And I just started following Bayer Leverkusen through him. And this is how I got myself to this point.
Very nice. That's great. That's great to hear. Because I was obviously, I remember us meeting on Twitter, and we were talking about it. I remember that night. It was earlier in the year, wasn't it? And I was always curious why Leverkusen were your team, and that's a great story. I really like that. Obviously, my earliest memories of Bayer Leverkusen came back at the turn of the millennium when they nearly won the league in 2000 and the treble horror of 2002. Obviously, I'm obviously a Wigan Athletic supporter, but my family also support Manchester United, and I still remember that 2002 semi-final very, very well against Bayer Leverkusen. So obviously, yeah, it was interesting. They had a great team back then. But yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, so as for Austrian football, yeah, that kind of led us on to our next question. So I guess that's how your love for Austrian football also happened in that very same trip. Do you have a favourite team in Austrian football? Was it Innsbruck or is it somebody else?
Yeah, I still have a lot of connection to Wacker Innsbruck. I went to several matches they played. I know some people at the club, so I'm still very well connected with this team that brought me to Austrian football. But right now they are not in the Bundesliga. They play in the Zweite Liga, which is the second tier of Austrian football. They are a very chaotic club, so you actually can sense the pattern of the clubs that I'm choosing to follow because all the three of them, like the main ones I focus my attention on, are exactly the same in this sense. So yeah, but I think I can call them my Austrian club.
And just finally, because we might as well complete the set of the three chaotic clubs, was your choice of Spartak in Russia, was it through parents, was it through friends, or just sheer discovery?
Yeah, it just runs in the family. My dad used to be a massive Spartak fan, and he actually kept taking me to the stadium from a very early age. I think my first match that I attended was around when I was 6. We actually tried to remember the exact matches that he took me, like for groundhopper purposes and so on, and we couldn't really do that, but I think it was around the age of 6. And yeah, we used to go a lot. I actually live quite close to the Dynamo Moscow stadium, fierce rivals. But yet again, we used to always go to Spartak away games on the stadium just for logistical purposes, because it's easy and because Spartak used to play everywhere around Moscow in before the Открытие Arena was built. So yeah, this is how it happened.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think my earliest memories of Spartak were the Champions League tie against Arsenal in 2000, when I remember I was like 11 years old at the time, and I think I was switching some highlights on television, and I just saw all the snow in Moscow and just thinking, this is crazy playing football in this weather. And I just remember, I think it was Yegor Titov, Robson, the Brazilian forward, and Yegor Titov having an absolutely brilliant game against a great Arsenal side back then, obviously coached by Arsene Wenger. So yeah, that was probably my earliest memories of Russian football, full stop, and of Spartak. So that's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, a bit of a chaotic theme with all three clubs, because all of them seem to be, a little unstable. Let's just say unstable, or seem to, have a habit of dodging trophies. but yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, interestingly, there's been a link between Spartak and Austrian football just in the last few days, as young Leon Klaassen, I think he's 21 years of age, of
Yes.
Tyrol. He has been linked with a move to Spartak recently, and I've actually read somewhere today that the transfer fee is it's either €1 million or just under. I think that's the fee being reported. So, as your Austrian football expert, Anna, could you give us some lowdown on Klaassen and what Spartak fans and Russian football and Russian Premier League fans as a whole, who follow RFN and follow the Russian league, can expect from Klaassen if he is to sign for Spartak?
I actually think that there are indications that the transfer is going to go through, because Vezgeti Hall have recently announced a new left back. So that's a direct replacement. But I think Klaassen is a rising star in a way, but for the size of the Austrian Bundesliga, which is a more modest league than the Russian league, actually. He has been seen as a talented young player at his previous club at München, at the blue side of München, but he never really made a big breakthrough that he was expected to do. So he came to Tyrol this summer with pretty modest expectations from him, because Tirolis are very also modest club with almost no money. They're always trying to get youngsters on loan from interesting places or just on a free. So and they managed to compose a really cool looking squad for the last couple of seasons. And Klaassen was just their typical transfer. I wouldn't say he's the biggest star in the team, but he has been showing consistent good performances. He's a certain starter at the club. He's good at tackling, he's good at crossing, he's good at pressing. Like, basically, that's everything you need from a more or less universal fullback nowadays. And actually, if the transfer goes through, I would be really happy for VSG Tirol because, as I've said, they are not the richest club in Austria, and their budget for the year is about 3.5 million. So just imagine if they manage to pull this 1 million transfer, how happy would they be?
That's just remarkable. Like, even like, you know, coming as someone from England who probably you can see third tier sides with considerably larger budgets than that. That's just incredible. Blows my mind. 3.5 million euros. Yeah, that is a huge cash injection for Tirol. I was looking at his stats just yesterday. Actually, I think he's got 6 assists, which I think correct me if I'm wrong, aren't they third or fourth bottom of the Austrian Bundesliga at the moment? I think that's where they are, aren't they?
Yeah, they have been struggling a bit this season because they had a big squad overhaul in the summer, and it took time for them to adjust and adapt again. But they have a really cool manager that has been working with the team for, I think, 9 years now. His name is Thomas Silberberger. He's obviously the longest serving manager in the league, because in Austria it's the ever chaotic carousel of managers every year. And they are getting back to their normal way.
Yeah. I saw his stats, and like I say, for a team that are struggling now near the bottom of the league, those are impressive stats to get 6 assists. So I'm quite excited about that. You know, I think Spartak probably do need someone to fill in at left back. And give Ayrton some competition for his place. Ayrton Lucas, the Brazilian left back. And I think, you know, this is quite a smart signing. Obviously, I think is he dual German Russian? Is that his nationality?
Yes.
So obviously now he'll be taking the Russian passport and therefore won't count on the foreign limit. So yeah, alongside Daniel Husevich from Arsenal Tula, that's 2 quite nice transfers for Spartak to improve their squad going into the winter break. So yeah, I'm excited to watch Klaassen. I'll certainly keep my eyes open for him if that transfer goes through. But let's continue on with the theme of Austrian football and in comparison to Russian football. Now, Austria recently has been going through a coefficient surge. Obviously, Russia was ranked 6th for a good period of time in the coefficient ratings, the Russian Premier League. But obviously, we've gone through them hundreds of times on this podcast before. The Russian Premier League has had a drop recently in the last couple of years. Does look like it's stabilising a bit now, but unfortunately, this is going to cost the Russian Premier League quite a lot. I noticed how just recently you mentioned, Anna, about the Russian League being the Austrian League being more modest compared to the Russian Premier League, but you know, the Austrian Bundesliga now is ranked 8th in Europe, which, you know, I was listening to the other Bundesliga podcast yesterday, great podcast on Austrian football, by the way, highly recommended. And they were all, the 3 guys hosting that were absolutely buzzing about the state of Austrian football at the moment, delighted at the results in Europe and the rise in the coefficients. And I have to say, it is very, very impressive how they have risen. So I'm just wondering, what's been behind this rise in the Austrian Bundesliga recently in recent seasons? And, you know, what good things has the Austrian Bundesliga done in recent seasons that the Russian Premier League and Russian football as a whole can take? What do you think can be taken from Austria and implemented into Russia to, you know, get the Russian league back up to that 8th spot or even higher in the coefficients?
Yeah, there have been several processes that have been going on for the past, I think, 7-8 years that benefited to the current state of the Austrian football. Because obviously they have a giant club with a perfect infrastructure that is Red Bull Salzburg, that is developing massively, absolutely massively. It's been a great pleasure to watch this project form and finally reach its current state. But at the same time, there was a big split in the past decade between smaller teams that want to grow and develop, and several big clubs like Rapid Vienna, Austria Vienna, Sturm, not really keeping up with the progress, because the smaller clubs are structured in a way that they allow more progress, more young people, more development, maybe some technologies. They're not afraid of doing that in the Austrian league. Whereas the big clubs are less flexible about that, and they missed several things. So right now we can see that Austria Vienna is in financial shambles. Rapid and Sturm are getting better in the last couple of years, but they have been in a dark hole for a while. But at the same time, we have clubs like Lask, for example, like Wolfsburg, even small ones like Hartberg, who managed to reach Europa League qualification. I think last summer they played it. Yet again, being a team with a budget of 4 and something millions per year. And this process of small clubs like finding their identities and trying to keep up with this identity. So it's sustainability. The key word is sustainability. This is a thing that led to the moment when we are now, that Austria has had 4 teams in the group stage of European competitions for 2 consecutive years, which hasn't been a case for a long, long time. So I think in Russian football, we don't really have this sustainability from small clubs. Okay, they're not financially stable because most of them are not private. They are funded by government, and they don't really know when these funds are going to end, so they can't plan ahead. But the thing that has been the main reason of the progress of the Austrian league is this sustainability, and that the club started to learn to think ahead, to think 2 steps ahead, and not like live from day to day.
Yeah, obviously I listened to the other Bundesliga podcast a lot, and I remember last year when VfC Wolfsberger, when Wolfsberger beat CSKA, they were absolutely delighted on the pod there, and it is impressive. Yeah, I remember them also mentioning Hartberg as well. These clubs are definitely improving, and you can see it with the coefficient now. You can see it with Lask having a perfect Europa League campaign, and they've had a difficult start to this year's Bundesliga season. Rapid have not had the best of starts, but yet they're still in Europe after Christmas. And Salzburg, obviously the big one. They've consistently been improving the last 3-4 years in Europe. And they've now got their reward in a Champions League knockout against Bayern Munich, which is credit to them, and showcases their level of improvement. I do see where you're coming from with the comparisons there, because obviously we've mentioned this problem for a while with Russian Premier League clubs, and some clubs in the FNL as well, about them being dependent on the regional government, not quite enough private investment. We are slowly starting to see with some clubs in the FNL now the first shoots of it, with Velez Moscow, Akron, and 1 or 2 others. But yeah, it's still got a long way to go. I'm just curious as well, because obviously we talk about this all the time on RFN podcast about the foreigner limit. If anyone out there listens to obviously our regular listeners to our podcast will know that we constantly keep bringing it up as a negative about Russian football, because obviously it's eight foreign players maximum allowed in the squads. Obviously in Russian Premier League squads, obviously in Austria, there's obviously no limit on the amount of EU players who can play in the squads. What's the situation with non-EU players? Because I know in some European leagues there are situations where there's a maximum amount of non-EU players you can have. Are there any restrictions in Austria, or is it very, very liberal with the policy?
Actually, there is a foreign quota in Austria, but it's like a soft one, because you have to have no more than 6 foreign players. It just doesn't mean if they're from EU or whatever, they just don't have the Austrian passport. No more than 6 players in the matchday squad. But if you fail this, if you don't comply with this, you just don't get the. There is a thing called like the Austrian pots. Every quarter, you get about 400 euros if you comply with the foreigner quota. If you don't comply with it, you just don't get this money. So it's a choice. Most teams choose to respect the quota, but there is Salzburg who obviously doesn't care about it. So they are just playing on with whoever they want. And I think this way is, I'm completely against all foreigner quotas in the end. But this soft way of doing that is much better than actual strict restrictions.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, if it was a case that was implemented in the RPL, and I'm sure that the large teams like Zenit, Spartak, Dynamo would just happily, not, just it's the equivalent of what you've just said there is the equivalent to like paying like a €400 fine or something. I'm sure the likes of Zenit, Spartak, Dynamo would happily do that if it meant they could upgrade their squads and get more depth, for the European competitions to improve the overall level of the RPL. So I mean, like I say, we go on about it all the time on RFN. We're all against the limit, and we've still curiously not heard anything yet about the limit being changed. We were discussing it at the start of the season, but it all seems to have gone very quiet. But we'll keep our eyes peeled for any news on that. So one last thing I'd like to say, because as part of the Hypercube reforms of Russian football, there was talk of also changing the league structure. I'm just interested to know what your opinion is on the Austrian Bundesliga structure, because there was talk of, when reforms for the RPL were mentioned, there was talk of maybe a split in the league. Now, I know Austrian Bundesliga is a 12-team league, and it's the top 6 go into the championship group and the bottom 6 go into the relegation group. I have to admit, if you were going to shorten the RPL, and I'm quite a fan of that kind of system, because it's obviously I think it's going to be a 22-game regular season, and then I think the top 6 play each other home and away, so you end up with a 32-game season, which I think is, given obviously the meteorological conditions in Russian football, you can't have too long a season, and because you have to factor into account the winter break. I think 32 teams is doable if you were going to shrink the size of the league, and I think copying the Austrian Bundesliga model could be quite good for Russian football. I'm just interested to know your thoughts on if you were going to reform the league, of course, from 16. I quite like the 16-team format as well. I'd just like to know your thoughts on the 12-team format and the split league in Austrian football, and do you think that could work in the future for Russian football?
If we take just the Austrian Bundesliga, I think it benefited from it. It profited from it massively because they also have they don't only have this system. There's also the moment when the table splits, they cut the points in half to make it more interesting to watch, because obviously Salzburg's dominance is a big problem for the league. But in general, it has been a very exciting reform. The only downside for that was that I think the league could complete one full season under these rules before COVID came, and there were problems with attendance for the bottom 6. So for these remaining 5 home games that you have, people were not just really eager to come to games against weaker teams. But this is just like one downside. In general, it made the league, I think it even made the league more competitive, because big teams are playing against big teams more often, and so they get more real football battle experience, and which is very important, especially when it's a very young league in general, because of the Austrian league. Many teams have very low average age, and they are not shy using youngsters. As for the Russian league, I think, the league clearly needs to reduce the number of teams, because every year we see the same old stories, like Tambov, for example, when teams are just crumbling and not being able to keep up with the financial requirements and so on and so on. And it would make Russian football more sane, more healthy if we have less teams. Yeah, I know the Hypercube reform was pretty similar to what's implemented in Austria, but I don't think it would be accepted too well just because of the general conservatism around Russian football.
Yeah, that's it. It's almost been like, I kind of get where you're coming from with that, because the conservatism thing of it about it, the foreigner limit. I mean, we really should be looking now at a decision already having been made on that, but obviously we're still not sure yet. The clubs are not sure yet on whether the foreign limit's going to be relaxed, removed, kept the same. It's all a bit up in the air. But yeah, I quite like the 12 team Bundesliga format. And I think if you were going to reduce the size of the Russian Premier League, I think that would be a good idea. I know a lot of people probably are against split leagues, but I think that format works quite well, obviously with the halving of the points. So yeah, and more intensive games at the end of the season when things are up for grabs, and I think that is a decent idea. And just one last thing about the Austrian Bundesliga. Obviously, you mentioned it just there now about Salzburg's dominance of Austrian football recently. Obviously, we at RFN have hopes that, and this is a topic we'll get onto later on in the podcast, that Dynamo might be able to, maybe not this season, but next season, launch a feasible challenge to Zenit. They've been the one team at the moment who look like they can stay up there with Zenit and live with them. Obviously, Zenit have won the last 3 Russian Premier League titles and are looking for a 4th one straight. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but has Salzburg won the last 8 Austrian Bundesliga titles, and Austria Vienna was the last Austrian team other than Salzburg to win the Austrian Bundesliga? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that is correct. And actually, there hasn't been real competition for years, apart from one season, the COVID season, the 2019, 2020. Because at that point, Lask were really, really close to that. But it was both Salzburg not really getting on well and crumbling around winter. Jesse Marsch. I can go hours and hours criticizing Jesse Marsch as a manager, honestly speaking. But at the same time, Lask were really strong because they just peaked at their little transformation that they have been going through for the past few years. Unfortunately, right now, things are not looking good for them because there were a lot of wrong decisions in the past couple of years. But at that time, they were really, really close. In February, they managed to beat Salzburg, and I think they were leading the table when COVID hit. But then they just managed to bury themselves because they were that team that broke the COVID training rules, and they were fined with, I think, 4 points deduction. And since then it just went downhill. But this was the only moment when anyone could challenge Salzburg in the past years, which is actually, it's sad in a way.
Yeah, obviously when we listen to the other Bundesliga podcast a lot, that's kind of the impression I get when I'm listening to Tom, Lee, and Simon. They're always kind of wanting someone to get up there challenging them, and then all of a sudden Salzburg at the end, it seems, when I listen to the podcast, they get an extra gear and they pull clear. But yeah, just one last question very briefly on that. Obviously, as I referred to earlier, we're hopeful that Dynamo or maybe someone else can launch a strong challenge to break Zenit's dominance in Russia. How far away do you think any of the other big Austrian sides are from challenging Salzburg? I mean, I'm kind of getting the impression Dynamo are quite close in Russia, but I thought that with Lokomotiv last year, and then Zenit just blitzed them in that 6-0 game and won the league. Do you think anyone is close to Salzburg soon? Could be getting a new champion in Austria, like we're hoping for in Russia soon in the future?
No, I don't really think it's realistic to hope for that because Salzburg are just miles away from everyone else infrastructurally, financially, and it's just the system that is already self-sustainable because they have their sporting director, Christoph Freund, is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting sporting directors even in the whole Europe because he has been responsible for Salzburg since 2015 Before that, Ralf Rangnick installed all the processes and built the system. And since then, Freund has done an incredible job at developing and tweaking it. And Salzburg are like a scouting machine. They have a very interesting youth system, and the system just, it's a self-sustainable thing because they have each year there is one star that breaks through, and if you look close, you already know that at their reserves there are next names, and you can point at them who will be the next ones, who will be the next Holland, who will be the next Domi Soboslai, who will be the next Patson Daka, or right now Karim Adeyemi. It's actually, I have a lot of hope for Rapid Vienna because, they were in shambles for the past half of the decade. But right now, I think they're on a more healthy way. They also got a very clever sporting director. They have a cool young squad at the moment. They just didn't have the right manager for the past 3 years. Right now, they got a new one. It's Ferdinand Feldhofer, the one who coached Wolfsburg at the time of their meeting with CSKA Moscow. But it's still... We still have to look if they fit together well, but in general, I think Rapid could be the closest in like long-term perspective. But all in all, I don't see any chance to someone to beat Salzburg as it is if Salzburg just doesn't implode themselves.
Yeah, that's it. It's almost like you've sort of got to hope that in situations like with Salzburg and like with Zenit, you've got to kind of hope that they drop a level. If you want to see a different winner, they've got to drop a level, and then you've got to have one or two teams below who could, catch up. But I'd probably go ahead with that as someone who obviously just takes, a much smaller interest in the Austrian Bundesliga. Looking in from the outside, I'd probably say Rapid are probably the most likely name. Depends what the situation is with Yusuf Demir now, whether Barcelona are actually going to pay, the fee to Rapid to buy him permanently. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not now, but they got 8 million from the Europa League group stage. If they can go on and run in the Conference League, get a bit more. Just about accumulating, finance that way, getting a big player sale, and then if you can accumulate enough cash that way, then you can slowly start to upgrade everything. And it's a bit like that with Dynamo at the minute. If they can get a good sale from Zakharyan and then reinvest, it's that kind of thing. Now moving on to German football, obviously, because that's another one of your specialities. I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are about. Obviously, as a Spartak fan, you're very familiar with Domenico Tedesco and his spell at Spartak. I really thought he conducted himself brilliantly in his 18 months at Clichy Arena. He's just recently taken over as the new manager of RB Leipzig. Now for me, I thought he would get a Bundesliga job, Tedesco, but I wasn't expecting one of the very top ones. Obviously, a vacancy has come available now with the firing of Jesse Marsch at Leipzig, which did surprise me. How do you think Tedesco will get on at Leipzig? Is this too big a jump after Spartak, or do you think he will prove a good fit there?
Actually, to speak about this, we have to understand that RB Leipzig are right now a mess of a club, honestly speaking. Everyone... Things have been swept under the carpet for a long time as they were performing well under Nagelsmann. But right now, you actually see that they are in organizational shambles, I would say, because after Rangnick left them, they are left with Oliver Minzlaff as their boss. I think his actual job is like a CEO but he's like the head of the club at the moment, and he has not been doing a good job. Let's put it just frankly, because what happened this season, why Jesse Marsch failed in the end. Under Nagelsmann, Leipzig played a very successful football, but it's not the Red Bull DNA football, because Nagelsmann focuses on possession, Nagelsmann plays from possession. And Red Bull football has always been something vertical, something pressing-oriented, something counter-attack-oriented. And this is the style that Jesse Marsch has and likes. And So the whole project of bringing Jesse Marsch to the club was basically a project of let's come back to the Red Bull DNA football. But Oliver Mintzlaff managed to not get a replacement for a departing sporting director. So in the summer, the club has basically had no sporting director. They couldn't replace the big departures like Upamecano or Zabitzer because they had no sporting director yet again. They are left with a squad that was built to play Nagelsmann's style of football, but they have to play Marsch's football. And so it's pretty obvious how quickly things went wrong, because it's been said that Jesse Marsch came to Mintzlaff around the match day 7 or something to confess that he doubts that the project is going to go well. So this is a situation that awaits Tedesco there. I think, after several years at Spartak with Fedun and all his surroundings, he is like mentally ready for something like that. But it's similar to the situation where he arrived to Spartak, because after all this mess with Kononov and terrible squads like that had no football, no atmosphere in the dressing room and nothing, he faces the same situation here. His appointment is also like a way to say that, we are going to give up on the Red Bull DNA project and we are going to go for someone more Nagelsmann style alike. Because, obviously, Tedesco doesn't strike as a Red Bull football manager. But I think in the current situation, when the squad is more inclined to, take his ideas, especially with the fact that Leipzig have been functioning pretty well in a 3-5-2 recently, and under Nagelsmann obviously too. It could go well. It could go well, actually, but I'm giving it a slight doubt, just in general, because, as you said, it's a big step up. But in general, I always thought I always rated Tedesco really highly, and I think he can handle this level, especially that they're out of the Champions League right now, and their tasks are smaller and more modest right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I go with that. As I say, I'm quite surprised because I was thinking he might get a Bundesliga job around, an Augsburg level of club, someone maybe mid-table or slightly lower. I am quite shocked at the jump, because obviously he was being linked with some sides right at the bottom of the Bundesliga or at the top of Bundesliga too. But, I don't think he's going to go back to Schalke after what happened last time. And, given the fact Schalke are in a bit of a mess at the moment, and it's worth remembering that he got them second in the Bundesliga, in his first season there before it all went sour in the second season. But again, you only have to look at the mess Schalke are off the field. But I'm absolutely delighted for him, and I really hope Tedesco can do well, because we were all at RFN, we were all quite impressed with the way he, conducted himself when he was in Russia. I thought he was great. He was fun on the sidelines, and he really got Spartak together, and he was almost a real charismatic character. He really got the players together, got them playing some nice football, and I really, really wish him well in his time back in Germany with RB Leipzig. I just want to know, obviously, going across Moscow now to Dynamo Moscow. Now, they also were a club for years who were renowned for, chaotic management at the top, inconsistent performances, inconsistent seasons, underachievement. But obviously, in just recently, they back in the start of 2020, they announced Zeljko Buvac as their new sporting director, Jurgen Klopp's former assistant at Liverpool. And and literally within 6 or 7 months of Buvac taking over, I think it was maybe just a little bit later than that. I think it was October last year. Sandro Schwarz, who used to coach Mainz 04 in the Bundesliga, took charge of Dynamo. He's been at the club 14 months now, and the improvement in Dynamo has been absolutely off the scale since Schwarz arrived. And and the promotion of young players, and the structure at Dynamo now with Buvac and Schwartz looks so much more better than what it's looked in the past. Obviously, you follow the German Bundesliga a lot. What did you make of Schwartz during his time at Mainz, and what's your opinion also on how well he's done in Russia so far, and also your general opinion on Buvac? They both recently signed contract extensions just this week to 2024. So just want your general opinions on that, Anna. What are your thoughts?
I think let's start with Željko Buvac, because honestly, I'm exceptionally surprised by what we're seeing here, like positively surprised. But then again, if you think, it's not such a surprise, because he has been Jurgen Klopp's right hand for a very, very long time. They even played together as players, and then they worked together just like, I think, almost from the start of Jurgen Klopp's coaching career, and they parted ways in Liverpool a few years ago under unknown circumstances, because it was a pretty weird situation back then. But during all the time they worked together, it was like publicly accepted that Buvac is the mastermind behind Klopp's tactics, and Klopp's more of a motivator and doing like administrative organizational stuff and so on, and Buvac is responsible for the tactics. I don't know if it's true. No one knows if it's true, but so I also saw Buvac more of a coaching-oriented person, but what he has been doing here at Dynamo, he just shows that he's an absolute fantastic manager in terms of like out-of-field things. And his job has been amazing. The squad looks really cool, really thought through. All the positions are covered. Their transfers of foreigners are mostly successful in the end. They have a very young, bright squad. They promote their own players. This is actually how a very healthy club looks like, and I'm amazed to hear that, because Dynamo have always been a very chaotic club, especially around their relegations and return. But also Schwartz's appointment is a really cool one, because I always rated Schwartz really highly at Mainz, because he did an amazing job working with the youngsters they had there. He also had like a very mediocre looking squad, but he managed to overachieve with the squad he had. And the club also were really happy with his work, and they gave him time. At some points, like other clubs might have let him go earlier than he left the job. But he was jumping over his head at Mainz, and I think he was a bit of an underrated manager in the Bundesliga, and I was surprised to see him come into the Russian league, because I thought that he might get a job at another mid-table Bundesliga team, but he's here, and I absolutely love watching Dynamo in the recent times.
Yeah, it's just such a breath of fresh air watching Dynamo these last 18 months or so, compared to, I remember watching them when Novikov and Dmitry Hoklov were in charge, and it was almost like they were winning games, by accident, winning games with a last-minute goal, not playing particularly well, a lot of direct style play, not really very well thought through. It all seemed a bit of a mess, didn't it? But since Buvac has come in, and since Schwartz has come in, I totally agree with you. There's certainly one of the most exciting sides to watch in the RPL now. The way he's blooded in the youngsters, and I really think this is good stuff that Schwartz has committed to 2024 with Dynamo, and I'm beginning to wonder if he's committing that long, because he really is committed. He really wants to see this through with Dynamo and win them a title. I mean, it's been such a long overdue situation for a club of their size and their stature. Obviously, they were one of the big clubs in the USSR era, and I think this 2024 contract extension is just a way of saying, because eventually I think Schwartz will want to go back to the Bundesliga and get a job there, and I think he's probably taking the Tedesco route of see what I can do at Dynamo for a few years, impress, And then, if I can win a title like a Russian Cup or challenge for a title, then, that will attract the attention back home in Germany. And then, he could get himself a decent sized club back in the German Bundesliga like Tedesco has. And I think I understand where you're coming from with his time at Mainz too, because I think almost with Mainz, they've had the two famous managers that they've had in the past have obviously been Jurgen Klopp and Thomas Tuchel. And it's almost been since they've left. I mean, I don't know whether you agree with me on this or not, Anna, but it's almost like since they've left, the managers since then have struggled by and large, and you have to remember with Mainz, I think they only got to the Bundesliga for the first time under Klopp. They're a very modest-sized club. There's so many clubs in the second Bundesliga who are bigger than Mainz in terms of history, stature, population size, all that kind of thing. So, I think he got the mid-table in his first full season in charge at Mainz too, from what I can recall. So that's obviously a decent achievement for a club of Mainz's size. I don't know whether that's a fair description, or would you agree with that by and large?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. It's just since Tuchel's time, I think, they didn't really have they weren't run well, I would say, because they went through several changes at the administrative level and they didn't go well in the end. And they also struggled financially at some point. I think there were a few court cases around them for wasting money that shouldn't have been spent, I would say. So in general, it's pretty obvious where it all comes from. So and Schwartz's work there was a highlight of him being actually a very talented manager.
Yeah, I can only really hope that this is a plan now to stick around at Dynamo till 2024 with Buvac and try and, put the cherry on top of the cake and win a title for Dynamo. I think that's ultimately what the goal has got to be. They do seem to be getting close to Zenit. We'll come on to that a little bit later on in the podcast. Just another couple more questions on German football. We seem to have seen a lot recently in the Russian Premier League of a look towards Germany for, both in the sense of managers and in the sense of sporting directors, technical staff behind the scenes. We've obviously seen Tedesco and Schwartz come to Russian football. We recently had the very short and sadly unsuccessful Ralf Rangnick spell at Lokomotiv Moscow. Thomas Zorn is obviously there now. I just want to ask your opinion on why do you think Russian clubs are turning to Germany for inspiration? Obviously, German coaches are in very high demand at the moment in the Premier League for with Tuchel, Klopp, and others as well. So, what do you think has been the reason behind it? And do you think this is a trend that will continue in the upcoming years?
I think in general there's much more interest in German football. It's growing. And the main reason behind that is the coaching revolution. Because basically all the modern football, let's use this term, coaches come from Germany. Because the processes that were started by Rangnick and his teachers, I would say, and it continued. And in the past decade, Germany has created a lot of absolute top managers, or just managers who are very interesting in general. And I think German Bundesliga was the first one to use more and more advanced stats, for example. So there has been a lot of progress in terms of how the clubs are run, how managers are getting ready for the matches, how players are managed and taught and taken care of. So it has been a league that has been progressing recently. And why Russian Premier League is using more and more of these connections, I think it comes the other way around in a way too, because Russia and Russian markets in football has been always interesting for Central Europe because it's a big, uncharted land, I would say. There were serious rumors that Red Bull are looking into buying a club in Russia. So yeah, all these jokes about Red Bull Spartak at some point, but yet again, we've also heard the rumors about Ufa being a candidate, or one of the FNL clubs I would not name, were also a topic for discussions. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's a sign of the fact that in Central Europe, the Russian Premier League is seen as an attractive but uncharted territory. And so, yeah, this is basically how it is. So, on one hand, we have modern, progressing league that has a lot of experience to share. And on the other hand, we have a big market.
Yeah, I can see where they're trying to come from, because obviously, I think that's one advantage Austria has. I think over Russia is the geographical location. I think obviously, if you're a progressive young German manager and you're impressing in the lower tiers, but you can't get in at the Bundesliga clubs, the Austrian Bundesliga could almost be a pathway to help you then get to the Bundesliga. I think that's one advantage. And even in Switzerland, for example, too, I think German is a working language in both Austria and Switzerland. So I think that's obviously those two countries very well connected with Germany. You see a lot of transfers from those leagues. And, Gerardo Sierrani went to your club, Bayer Leverkusen, from young boys in the summer. And, obviously we're seeing now with the promotion of Jesse Marsch from Salzburg to Leipzig, and, maybe even Matthias Jessler in the future too. So, yeah, it's obviously the advantage of Switzerland and Austria is because obviously they speak German. There's obviously that connection. So that is quite interesting. I just want to also ask your opinion on, well, it's not been, as you can probably tell from all of our podcasts recently, it's not been particularly a very positive start for it's not been a positive start for one particular German manager in Russian football in the shape of Marcus Gizdale. I mean, they got a win in the final game before the winter break, did Lokomotiv, but they're out of Europe. Just want to ask your opinion on Gizdale. I mean, when you heard the news, were you shocked? Because all of us at RFN, we were wondering, because we saw some names from the two Bundesliga, some young coaches being linked with the Lokomotiv position, and then when we saw Gizdale. I have a friend who follows German football quite a lot too, and when he told me the news about Gizdale going to Lokomotiv, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not bowled away by that. I'm not enthusiastic about that. That seems a bit of a gamble." And then, yeah, we've kind of all the signs of what we were warned about with Gizdale before he came have kind of come true. So, just want your thoughts on Gizdale to Lokomotiv. It's not been the best so far, has it?
Yeah, and it's really predictable. Like it's going exactly as I expected when I first heard the news. But yeah, in general, the whole Rangnick saga at Lokomotiv has been really, really weird, especially for me as a person who follows what Rangnick has been doing in German and Austrian football for a long while, because what he has been doing here is not really his style. It's a very weird way of I would say it's looked like he came to Lokomotiv just to gain the first line in his agency CV, and didn't really bother to do a good job at the same time. Because he came there, he brought in his big 5 years program that he presented at that presser, which actually looks like a compilation of his public lectures for the past 10 years, honestly speaking. And it didn't really have anything eye-opening. It was just a description of how a normal, healthy club should look like, honestly speaking. And then he presents this 5-year plan, and he brings in, as a manager, he brings in Marcus Gizdale, who isn't really the most optimistic choice out of everyone. And he brings him on a 1-year contract. That doesn't feel right, yes? So, yeah, Gizdale has not been exceptional at any of his previous jobs, honestly speaking. And his style of football is basically what we're seeing right now. It's a hierarchy football that doesn't end well in 99% of the situations. And yeah, for everyone who has seen at least one match under Gizdale, before that, everyone with this experience could have already said that it's not going to end well at Loco. But yet again, I repeat, the whole situation around Loco is really, really out of the ordinary and out of what we could have expected when a person with such a reputation as Rangnick is normally linked to. So, no, it's a mess.
Yeah, it seems like for me with Gizdale, the last decent job he did in a German club was back at 1899 Hoffenheim. I think he was I think Nicolas Sula and Roberto Firmino were two players who I remember, playing for him back then, and I think he got them mid-table. But yeah, his last two jobs at Hamburg and at Köln have been just a disaster. They really haven't been good. I mean, I kind of understood. Lokomotiv was a difficult one because obviously, if you wanted to bring in a coach from Germany like Rangnick did when he was there, obviously it's difficult to get managers to move mid-season. There was talk of Robert Klaus from Nuremberg, and one coach I would have been intrigued to see, who I know has been getting a reputation as Zweite Bundesliga in Germany recently, has been Ole Werner, but obviously for his job at Holstein Kiel, I think it was. But obviously now he's gone to Werder Bremen. That would have been an interesting choice, but obviously at the time I think he was still in work at Kiel, and Gizdale was free, so maybe that would have conditioned Lokomotiv appointing. But yeah, it's just not been good so far. I mean, I remember watching the Lokomotiv game against Marseille recently, and it's just they offered absolutely nothing all game, and you could literally count the number of games they've had under Gizdale that have been good on one hand. It's just been that poor. I mean, do you think someone like a Werner or a Klaus would have been good for Lokomotiv, like from the two Bundesliga?
Yeah, because generally the concept that Rangnick left the club with, I would be careful with choosing my words here, it's basically includes having a young prospective manager who will come and make connection with young players, who will have a modern playing style, and the team, the squads, and the manager will both develop. This is how it normally works at Salzburg. This is how it worked at Hoffenheim under Rangnick Rue when he was not coaching himself, and this was what was expected. So yeah, names like Klaus, names like Werner, and maybe we could think of someone else. But yeah, the problem is mid-season, and the problem is that yet again, why I'm careful speaking about this whole situation, Rangnick worked with Gizdale a lot. So basically, Rangnick wrote in his Ocean's 11, I would say. And yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I hope he turns it around, Gizdale, but yeah, I'm already beginning to have my doubts. Yeah, it's not great at the moment. So yeah, I think that covers everything on the Austrian and German links with Russian football. So some fascinating insight there that we've had from Anna. And now, moving on to domestic matters, there's two things I'd like to bring up before we wrap the pod up, and that's the first of which is the unfortunate recent events at Spartak. Now, obviously, we were on cloud nine after last week's pod when the 2-1 win, when the 1-0 win over Legia Warsaw saw them top the Europa League group and progress automatically to the round of 16. But then Spartak came crashing back down to earth, seeing out the end of the matchday 18 program of the Russian Premier League, the final game before the winter break, with a 3-0 away loss at PFC Sochi, courtesy of goals from Christian Naboa, Yvelin Popov, and Artur Yusupov. This defeat dropped Spartak down to 9th place in the RPL standings. They are currently 13 points behind Dynamo in second and 15 points behind Zenit at the top of the table. And all the reports that we heard pre-game against Legia that Rui Vitoria was to leave his position proved true. He was fired by Spartak just this week after just 18 rounds of the season. Reports are linking Paolo Vanoli, who was a former left-sided player at both left fullback and left winger, at clubs like Parma, Fiorentina, and Glasgow Rangers, is been the man linked with the job, and many are expecting him to arrive and sign at Spartak. It's only still rumours at this moment in time, but he is the favourite to arrive at Spartak and sign. So here's my take on this, and then I'll hand it over to Anna and see what she thinks about the situation. I think that I'm sort of torn on this, because I think Vitoria's achievements in European football this season with Spartak, considering how disastrous a start it was for Spartak, did merit, in my opinion, giving him till at least the end of the season. But I do think the results domestically were not great. It's sort of that double-edged sword. I would have liked to have seen them stick with him, but I can understand why Spartak have decided to make this decision. Obviously, with Vanoli, he was formerly Antonio Conte's assistant manager at both Chelsea and at Inter Milan in 3 of the last 4 seasons. I think he's been an assistant manager with the Italian national team as well. And I can understand where Spartak are coming from for this, because I think the top 3 finish is sort of out of the question at the moment, given the poor start. But European football's been parked till mid-March, because obviously they get a bye into the last 16 of the Europa League. If you bring in a new coach now, it will give him 6 months until the end of this current season, and a whole winter break programme where you can have friendlies to fine-tune things. There's some new signings coming in at Spartak, as we've discussed with Klaassen and Husevic. And I think this could be an interesting move, because it will give him a chance to get up to speed, get them up the table, have 12 games remaining in the current RPL, and maybe 1 or 2 games, and maybe 3 or 4 games in Europe, depending on how far Spartak gets. So, fine-tune everything, get his squad together, and then next season you see the real, when he gets his first full season in charge, you can then see the real progress hopefully start to be made. I think Conference League qualification is still on for Spartak. I think that's a competition which, with a good manager, with their squad, they could do quite well in. I think they could have a really good run in that, because I think it's a competition which has been designed for leagues like Russia. So that's just my take on the Vitoria situation. I understand why he's been dismissed, but I do think part of me thinks it is a little bit harsh. I'm intrigued to know what you think on the firing of Rui Vitoria, Anna. What's your thoughts on that, and on my views on the new manager situation?
Yeah, I can totally understand your point of view, and I think you're right in many things. But when we are speaking about Spartak, every time we have to speak about stuff in the background, because things that are happening at Spartak are not happening only on the football pitch. They are happening behind closed doors too. And as we know, Spartak is run by a very interesting system, I would say, with the owner Leonid Fedun and his wife Zarema Salihova, who has a big say in what's happening. As we could follow her way of thoughts during her brief coming to Telegram. And she ran a Telegram channel, and it was an absolute mess, because she basically wrote about things that should not reach the public in what's happening in the background at the club. But Rui Vitoria was doomed from the start, because she didn't like him. She wanted to bring Paolo Vanoli this summer, but she couldn't convince people who made a decision for Rui Vitoria. And in the end, it was this situation when Vitoria was not welcomed by a big part of, I would say, opinion makers at the club just from his day one. I think he behaved perfectly under pressure all this time. I thank you, because you did really, really decently. You went through it with a lot of dignity. But in general, it was not meant to be just from the beginning, because there were so many obstacles in this situation, and he never really made the contact with the dressing room either, as we also can notice from 1 or 2 signs that are coming up from that. So it was not about football, seriously. So this is why, there are two phases of Spartak we are seeing this season, because in the games that really, really matter, they get it together and do their jobs well. But in general, like in everyday life, things are just not working out. So yeah, I also think that the European campaign could have given him a chance to stay until the end of the season, but yet again, you cannot work under pressure, under such massive pressure, for such long periods of time. So it's pretty obvious why he left. But honestly speaking, I'm really skeptical about the Vanoli appointment if it happens. But as things stand, media are reporting that tomorrow's the presentation, so we'll see. Because it is a weird appointment, because he doesn't have any first team experience as a head coach. Yes, he has been Antonio Conte's assistant. He worked at absolute top clubs. Okay, we get it. But you can't really find a second Massimo Carrera, because Massimo Carrera's story was just unique. It was something that, like, many things came together as puzzle pieces, for example. And right now, you just basically, okay, let's get another Antonio Conte's manager with no experience. Maybe it will work for the second time. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work normally like that. So I'm very skeptical about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a strange one. It's almost like this appointment. It's almost like Spartak are trying to, let's just say, hope for a second coming of Carrera. I think it's got the Carrera blueprint, if you like. I use that word in a very loose term all over it, because obviously Carrera worked as Conte's assistant at Juventus, and yeah, that I can see that's where Spartak are trying to look at it. But I certainly agree with you, yes, and I certainly agree with you that this is a risk, because obviously Vanoli has no first team experience. His whole coaching career has mainly been as a number two with Italian youth teams, with Italy national team as assistant, and then obviously with Chelsea and with Inter under Conte. Obviously, he'll probably play a back. I can't second guess it, obviously, but I assume he's going to probably play a back three. So obviously, Spartak are used to playing that formation based on recent seasons. So yeah, it's a complete mystery. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, there's always that skepticism about it, I think. Yeah. But obviously we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it was tough for Vitoria, obviously, with all the stuff going on behind the scenes at Spartak. I mean, we discuss it all the time on all the pods. And yeah, it's. I just think, the results in Europe were good, but obviously I can understand it from a domestic standpoint, because the results in the Russian Premier League were not good. And finally, our last bit of topic. Speaking of the Russian Premier League, it was the game of the game of the match day. Was the game at VTB Arena, where Dynamo drew 1-1 with Zenit. Zenit took the lead on 34 minutes, courtesy of Claudinho, one of the stars of the RPL season so far. Lovely build-up play on the right-hand side from Malcolm, who did a wonderful long run before laying it off to Mostovoy, who then combined well with Karavayev to cross the ball low into the path of Claudinho, who made it 1-0 to Zenit, and it was a fully deserved lead going into half-time, as Zenit were the best side by far in the first half. However, the second half, it was very much a game of two halves. Dynamo were by far the better side in the second half, and deservedly got their equalising goal on 72 minutes. Lovely link-up play between Denis Makarov and Guillermo Varela on the right side, who swung in an accurate cross towards the back post, where Dmitry Skopintsev ghosted into the space and slammed home the equalising goal. And I think if you look at the shots, 12 to Dynamo, 5 to Zenit, both, and 5 shots on target to Dynamo and 3 for Zenit, you could probably argue the second half performance, Dynamo probably at minimum deserved the draw, maybe even slightly edged the game. It's a result which leaves Dynamo just 2 points behind Zenit going into the winter break. Dynamo on 36, Zenit on 38. And I think that equaliser was important for so many reasons, because had Zenit won the game eventually, that would have meant that they were 5 points clear of Dynamo, and that probably, in all honesty, would have probably sealed another title for Zenit. I still think Zenit are favourites for the title. I actually thought, irrespective of what happened in the game against Dynamo, where even if Dynamo had won and took the lead of the table going into the winter break, I still think Zenit are favourites. But this game was quite interesting to see because it was good to see a team go toe-to-toe with Zenit, and Dynamo have been the most likely team to do that all season. So it does give you hope that you could see a title race in the RPL come the spring, and I think it's something that we'd all absolutely welcome, and I think it would also benefit Zenit as well and raise their level. I'm just curious whether you saw this game, Anna, and do you have any thoughts on Dynamo 1, Zenit 1?
Yeah, honestly speaking, I missed the game. I just watched it on highlights after that. But yeah, as we've discussed that before, Dynamo Moscow look like a very healthy team at the moment. And the fact that they managed to get to the winter break only having 2 points less than Zenit is very, very important, because this will clearly be a big push for the preparation, for the mood, for everything. And yeah, as winter training in Russia is long and tiring, you have to get to the winter break in the right mood. And this is absolutely the thing that Dynamo did in this weekend. And I also don't really think they are going to keep up with Zenit for too long. So there will be some point that they will break. So I don't really think it's going to be a title race until the end of the season. Especially now that, yeah, Dynamo have a very cool squad, but I believe if any serious injuries, like, for example, Lesavoy's injury was compensated by other players, but if anyone else, God forbid, manages to get a serious injury or something, they might not really have the power and the squad depth to compensate that. So yeah, we'll just see what happens. But this 1 point was crucial for the whole league, for the whole scenarios that are happening right now, and I think they can be happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I go with that, and I think Sebastian Szymanski actually didn't play in that game at the weekend. I think he was still recovering from a small knock that he took. I think when Krotov did that tackle on him, that poor tackle on him, which injured the back of his foot. And Krotov in the previous game against Ufa, when Dynamo played Ufa, got sent off for that. And yeah, I think Szymanski was a big miss for Dynamo in this game, because obviously he was the November player of the season, has been playing exceptionally well. Lesavoy, I think, is back in the 1st of February. I think Transfermarkt had information on that, and I think Szymanski's injury, I think it's straight away in the new year he will be back. So fingers crossed those two players can get back to fitness for the resumption of play. I think they should do. And yeah, I agree with you. I just don't quite see Dynamo this season having the depth to go with Zenit. I think their best bet is probably next season. Try and maybe take advantage of a little bit of turbulence at Zenit, because I think, Asmoon, there's reports of him going to Olympique Lyonnais. There's a couple of other players at Zenit out of contract. There might be some more interest in players like Barrios, transfer interest in players like Barrios and Claudinho. So Zenit might be going through a bit of a transitional phase come the end of the season. So that will be interesting to see how they manage that. But yeah, I totally agree. I think this season, I'd like to see Dynamo go to the end with Zenit, but I just can't see it. I think Zenit will eventually pull away. I think maybe Schwartz needs another year yet with this Dynamo team as they get better, mature, and maybe one or two more signings to push them over the line. And yes, speaking of the final round of the Russian Premier League, before the winter break, I'll just give a brief overline of the scores. Krylia Sovietov 2, Rubin Kazan 0, CSKA Moscow 2, Arsenal 2, 0, FK Rostov 1, Ural Yekaterinburg 4, Dynamo Moscow 1, Zenit 1, as we just recently discussed, Akhmat Grozny 4, FK Khimki 1, Krasnodar 0, Nizhny Novgorod 0, Lokomotiv Moscow 2, FC Ufa 0, and finally PFC Sochi 3, Spartak Moscow 0. So, in other news, the draw for the UEFA Nations League 2022-23 took place. This is the tournament which will predetermine. It acts as part of the qualification process for Euro 2024. Spornaya are in Group B of the competition, and today they were drawn against Albania, Iceland, and Israel. On paper, you could say that's one of the best draws Spornaya could have asked for, but as we all know on this podcast, that following Spornaya can, be a torturous experience at times, and they can also, disappoint when you're expecting good things from them. But on paper, if you would have offered me and all of us at RFN that draw pre-draw, I think we would have all taken it. And I think that is it for our podcast today. So I just want to say a huge thank you, Anna, for your appearance today. It was fascinating insight into Austrian, German, and Russian football, and all the similarities and differences between them, how ideas can be shared, and all the other topics that we discussed today. Is there anything before we go that you would like to plug?
No, I don't think so. Just thanks for having me here, and it was a big pleasure for me too. So it was a nice evening and a nice discussion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Huge thank you for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, and ladies and gentlemen, that is it for 2021 on RFN podcast. So on behalf of myself, on behalf of James, and on behalf of David and all the other people that appeared on our podcast over this year, we'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and Se Novi Godom, Happy New Year, and we will be back actually sooner than you think. Actually, we will be taking a little break for Christmas and New Year, but we'll be back in the first or second week of January to do a team of the autumn. That's obviously a team, RPL team of the autumn podcast, where we discuss who's obviously been the best players so far, or who's our team of the year so far in the RPL, in the 18 rounds that have gone so far. But I'd like to reiterate Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. And this has been the RFN podcast. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.
Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Веди его, беги, точнее его ударь. Но мяч берет ноги решительный вратарь. Не напрасно футбольное поле самых ловких и смелых влечет. Здесь нужны тренировка и воля, быстрота, увлечение, расчет.